Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jeonneok series, where we explore the Admiral Sword, a Korean Joseon Dynasty sword form. Now if you haven't seen the previous videos in the series, check them out above. So today we'll be talking about the Yongyak Il-jase, the bold leaping flat sword posture. And it's the only stabbing form in Jeonneok, which is quite different from other Korean sword forms which have multiple stabbing forms. In Jeonneok this is the only one. The Yongyak Il-jase is also quite different from other stabbing forms, as it's got displayed upwards and there's some complex footwork to it. And it's reflected in the name, the bold leaping flat sword posture. So the bold leaping part refers to the footwork. It's a long distance stab with a lot of power, and the flat sword refers to the blade being pointed upwards, as it's shown in the diagram that accompanies it in Muye Double Tongji. So it's quite different from other stabs because the Yongyak Il-jase is slower and has more power. Now if you think about the generic stab, it can either be done with blade up or blade down. And either way it's a lot quicker and you don't have the complex footwork of the Yongyak Il-jase. And I would personally group the generic stab into the normal Kyukjutse, the offensive posture. And I would say it's probably the 8th line of attack apart from the other 7 slashing lines of attack. Now I did a test in another video that you can check out where I did the generic stab with blade up, blade down, rising stab, downward stab, and I found there wasn't actually that much difference between them. So you can practice the generic stab however you want, but you definitely need the generic stab as well as the Yongyak Il-jase, because the Yongyak Il-jase doesn't really work as the only stab in your arsenal. You do need that quicker stab as well. So let's talk about the Yongyak Il-jase. So for the first part, let's jump to the flat sword bit. This refers to the handwork of the form. And so in this way then the blade is pointed upwards, and it works really well either stabbing downwards from above or stabbing in a straight line from the midline. It doesn't really work very well as a rising stab with the blade up. So if we're doing the form from right long stance, then if you think about the stab, then the right hand is doing this. So if you see it from the side, this is not a very powerful motion, and there's a lot of forces pushing the elbow in a direction it doesn't really want to go. And if you think about the left hand, if you don't change your grip, it's also doing this windscreen wiper motion. So it's not a very powerful form. But how you remedy that is that if you take your left hand and you shift it so it's 180 degrees around. So rather than gripping like this, it grips like this. Then from here, the push of the left hand just pushes with the body and it's all in line and it becomes a very powerful motion. And so the right hand just does some guiding and the power comes from the left hand. Now let's say that you're doing it from left long stance. Well then in that case, then your right hand and your left hand are both like this, and your right hand is actually in line to push for it. And so the left hand is doing that odd windscreen wiper thing, and so the grip doesn't need to be changed because you can get a lot of power out of the right hand and have the left hand as the guiding hand. So if you're doing it in right long stance, remember to change the grip of the left hand. If you're doing it in left long stance, no need to change your grip. So now let's talk about part 2, the bold leaping part. So this refers to the footwork. And in the Korean way, it's done from right long stance, and then the left foot steps in front of the right foot while keeping the hips in the same orientation. Then you launch off from the left foot and you step the right foot forward to propel yourself with a lot of power, and then you stab. So it's very much like a longer, slower skipping step, and you try and avoid it becoming like the alternate step. Because in the alternate step, then the hips turn, and that's really not what you want. Now compared to the generic stab, then this has a lot more power, it also covers a lot more distance, but it's a lot slower. And I also think that it's a bit of a clunky form when I practice it. So I have another interpretation, which I'm not sure if Admiral Lee would have done, but I think it works quite well, and I call it the Superman. So the footwork is similar to a Superman punch, where one leg kicks up and then kicks out back to act as a counterweight for the whole body to throw itself into, in a Superman punch, the punch, in this way then a stab. Now if you see the form done in the air, it looks like a really odd form, but if you've ever been hit by a Superman punch, you know it packs a lot of devastating power because the full body weight of the person is into it, and it's got huge amounts of power that a regular punch would struggle to achieve. So for this form I'm going to practice it using a bokken because it is a bit of a crazy form. And so from right long stance, you lift your left leg out in front, and then you imagine that there's an air ledge that your left foot is standing on. you jump off from the right foot and you kick off from that air ledge so that the left foot kicks out behind you and you throw that stab with the full body twisting into it. So the Superman version has huge power compared to the Korean version, and it also has the advantage of being a lot faster. And also on uneven territory, uneven ground, then you can just jump to avoid all of that stuff rather than having to have this complex skipping step. Now, like I said, I'm not sure if Admiral Lee Rusong would have done this form, but I find that it works quite well. And it's definitely bold and leaping. So try it out if you want to try that one, or you can just stick to the Korean version if you like. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you like learning about the Yongyaki or Jase. It's a very interesting stabbing form. And I'm not sure if Admiral Lee Rusong did this form this way because he used straight swords compared to curved katana-like swords, or if it was just because he liked doing it this way and it doesn't really make a difference, depending on what sword you use. Either way, I think it's really important to have the generic stab as well as the Yongyaki or Jase in your arsenal, because you need the speed of the generic stab, but when you need to pierce through bamboo armor or chainmail, then having the Yongyaki or Jase is quite useful. Now, as always, please use a boxer when you practice this form, because safety is most important, and stay safe if you're unfamiliar with the form. Once when you're used to it, then you can use the live blade. Also, if you haven't seen our document down below, please check it out. In it, you'll find the form of Jedokgum as it's practiced in Korea in a lot more detail than you'll find in other English translations of Muye Double Tongji. You'll also find my personal interpretation of the form. Now, I made this document so that it would be more accessible to the English-speaking community, so please check it out. It's completely free and do share it with your friends. With that, I'll see you next time.